20 years all of a sudden. There we are. I don't know what was happening. I hate when StreamYard does that because I be stressed. I'm like, wait, is it live? Is it not live? But if you guys are coming in, you just saw us at Women Wrestling Talk NXT Recap Review Show. But we are here with some goodness that is Dark Side of the Ring. It's been a little minute. The last time we were what was it, last year, I think, we did Dark Side of the Ring. And so we are on season 4, and it kind of started with a goodie, or like with Chris Candido. I'm hoping I'm saying his last name right. And Tammy Sunny. And everybody knows everything. I don't know, did you? I don't know if you heard, but I was just like, what was your initial thoughts of like the episode as a whole?
Fighting for my life with this internet. It was, I'm not gonna lie, it gave me the big sad, like just how things turned out. Definitely kind of, I mean, I know we know how things turn out, but just like the retelling of it and just seeing how things unfolded, you know, and just knowing some extra details that I was not privy to, it was disappointing. But I mean, I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was, you know, put together well. It just sucks how things, you know, panned out.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because I thought we would have gotten a little bit more about Tammy, honestly. Hey, Curry, what's up? Thank you for popping in. Yeah, I thought we would have gotten some more about Tammy, honestly, especially with Tammy's last year or so. Sis has been in and out of like prison and jail and stuff. So I was like, okay, like, but it was kind of sad. It made you. I was at the end like, damn, like it made you feel a little sad. And like I knew stuff, but not really like get into the details because I'm not gonna pretend I was like a Chris fan. I wasn't. But it also made you kind of side eye a couple of things. And so the episode does start off talking to Chris, like as far as, which I did appreciate his dedication to wrestling. And I say this like the fact that he was like 13, he made a wrestling belt like out of some weights, and he like that. To me, I would not have done at 13. You might have gotten a couple of fan fictions, which I did write at 13. You would have gotten me like, you know, having a Barbie or something and like making Ken be a creep, and then me like, I don't need you, and that's what you would have got from me at 13. And so the fact that he did all that at 13, I thought was pretty cool. I don't know what his mom was doing when they was like him, his friend had this like wrestling thing, and he will go, I'm at my friend's house, and then the other one be like, I'm at his house. How do you not know kids wrestling? This is my. So you tell me they had not one bruise, not no, like something. I'm like, what are you doing? Y'all didn't call and check in the parents, like, oh, my kid over there, he good. He's like, you don't need to be like hovering, but you don't ask questions as a mom. I'm like, oh, white people stuff. And I'm just let's call it let's call it spade. That's white people stuff, because my mom would never. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna sleep over, and I'm out here going to a different part of town, and I'm just like wrestling, and my mom's just, she's like, I didn't know. I'm like, how did you not want? You wasn't aware, you just was completely oblivious. Like, mom, pay attention. Like, I don't know, just that kind of bothered me as a mom, because I'm like, sis, that was white people stuff to me. You know, sometimes white people do weird stuff. That was one of them, because I'm like, you're not concerned. But the first thing they did say was he was somebody who's really dedicated to wrestling and always wanted to be. Listen, y'all know, no offense to the white people. I know quite a few lovely white people, but sometimes y'all do things that makes no sense to me, and I just need to ask why. Because like, just be, you know, people are crazy out there. I mean, it's even worse now, but like, how your kid going to wrestle every weekend and you're not aware? Like, oh, I didn't know. How? Y'all didn't call each other once and be like, I don't know, is Chris all right? He need anything? Do I need to bring some food? Like, I don't know. Like, as a parent, my kids, I know my kids greedy, they eat. So I'm like, do you need extra food over there because they might eat you out of a house at home? Like, that's what I would act as a parent. So the fact that he was just going on the bus and traveling and he had his own little promotion, how was she unaware is beyond me. So that's what I mean about white people stuff. I just let kids do God knows what and just oblivious. And I can't. This is why people get killed in horror movies. Let's I'm just saying, like, I didn't understand how she was unaware, but I did appreciate that he had his little belt. It was pretty professional looking. I was like, oh, you better than some wrestling promotion belts I've seen recently. I don't want to point no elbows, but I was like, okay, this is pretty for a 13-year-old. That's pretty cool. And so I like that they started off with that. And so they kind of say he gets a little older. He's like want to wrestle. He's doing all these things, and he wound up meeting Tammy. And so this was the thing that I kind of side-eyed him because there was the mom was talking about he had this prom date and she was taking him to prom. She was going to prom and he saw Tammy. He was like, deuces. Hey. And I'm just like, so me and Chris gonna have to have a prom. Like, you don't take me to prom and I'm excited for prom. And you're like, oh, this girl's here. Bye. And we're just gonna be over. Like, so we didn't question this. We didn't ask like, where are you going? Like, you're gonna finish my prom date. I'm gonna have my prom. Okay. And then you want to go be with Tammy? Go be with Tammy. Why? I just like, I'm like, and she was like, well, that wasn't nice. I'm like, you didn't tell him, once again, mom, you didn't tell him about himself. You didn't go, maybe, don't be rude. Don't be rude to, I don't know, you did your prom date. You know, you didn't, I mean, I saw his teenage pictures and it's not like he was like the greatest thing, you know? So I'm like, you just be, let's not have audacity. And so I was a little annoyed by that. So he's like, it wasn't nice. So I'm like, you didn't tell him about himself. You didn't say like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe wait till after prom and then go hang out with Tammy. I don't know. But listen, I feel like what dark side of the ring, how he's darkened my days by being on my screen. That's the dark side of the ring. My days are darkened. That's what happened. Okay, anyways, bring it back in because y'all keep starting with me. And so they start saying that, you know, he was worried his mom's gonna be mean to Tammy. And she was like, I'm not gonna be mean, and whatever. And then we kind of see how she kind of starts supporting him. And so I got that part. I'm like, all right, you which person, you try to support what they do. I've done that. I've been with people where, you know, I support everything they did and was biggest supporters. I've done this quite recently. So I know. And so I expected that she was kind of there just supporting. My thing is where it kind of got weird for me was when we started getting her into wrestling business. And this is why I think Jim Cornette messed up right there. And this is just, I do think Jim Cornette knows, but for the most part, when he's not going sometimes his rant's a bit extra. But for the most part, he knows what he's talking about. He knows how to get the crowd. And so for that regard. And so I'm like, all right, he wants, like, she was going to med school. That was the mistake right there. I felt like if you go to school to be a doctor, you could have some coins. You could have been okay. And we wouldn't have probably the life that we got for Tammy. I feel like that's why I feel like it could have went such a different route if she would have stayed in med school. Which Jim Cornette was like, you know what, let's come to Smoky Mountain. And he was like, well, I can't make him move here to the middle of Midwest. Like, let's bring your girlfriend in. And then the girlfriend's like, she's going to be like a manager. And then he wants the whole Hillary Clinton, like the Republicans didn't like Hillary Clinton. Republicans still don't like Hillary Clinton. And they like do all this and they get them upset. Then he was like, you know what? Let's bring her in as. So once he did that, I feel like that was the road for Tammy. It just completely changed because I felt like if she would have just stayed her ass in med school, maybe this wouldn't have been so bad for her. Like maybe she would have had a different thing. I think her being attractive, being really pretty, having people like, oh, it's you, to the point where people was like, oh, I want to see who she is. Like we don't really like her, but she's pretty, you know. And so that's when we started getting to where things started getting weird with them. And so before we get to the next part, what were your thoughts about that leading up to him starting at Smoky Mountain and Jim Cornette?
Well, I definitely agree with it. Was very that was not cute, the whole prom thing. Let's not do that. That is not nice. I do feel like if she never got into wrestling, she would have had a totally different life. I feel like a lot of times, especially back then, it was like gonna go one way or the other depending on how you ended up on the card or how your booking ended up. It one way or the other, depending on how your mentality was. If you had a strong mentality, you probably would be okay with it. You know, things were getting to you. It probably would have had not the best effect on you. And obviously we saw that within Tammy, like the slow decline. Um, just looking at like her stuff from back then, like she did have like just a natural on camera, presence about her. And she was really beautiful. I could never take that from her. I just wish she went about things differently, and I wish she would have went to medical school. Girl, should girl, you should have been on your Grey's Anatomy because what went. I, listen, let's just keep going on because listen.
Yeah, I felt like things could have been differently. And so we kind of start seeing like they kind of go into promotions, kind of working their way around the promotions and stuff. And then we get to kind of getting them to WWE. And so this I and we and Lance Storm, because Lance Storm did make an appearance. Like, obviously Mick Foley, because Mick Foley worked with them at Smoky Mountain, and he did say that, he thought Chris was a nice guy. There was one thing everybody pretty much said, that Chris was a nice guy. Like, he did have his struggles with things, but he was a nice guy. Actually, before the struggles, I actually said he was very clean. And so that was kind of unfortunate too, because it's like he's a clean guy. He just want to wrestle. He just want to travel. He want to wrestle. He loves the wrestling so much. He like to the point where he was going for like no money, going, until he makes his WWE. So he's probably like, oh, this is where I want to be. This is the big leagues. This is everything, that it could be. Um, and that's when stuff kind of starts going downhill for Chris, and that kind of is what made me really love. I'm like, oh man, and it didn't make WWE look any good. Like with this, where it was just like, oh, okay, well, are we gonna, what I mean? Like, I felt like it just there were so many things that could have probably been different if we if he didn't go there. And I know that's like the end all be all for somebody like it might have been a little better for him because I set him down a path that wasn't necessarily like the best path. And so he starts doing he gets hurt and starts like taking medicine, drinking, and so from there I believe Jeff practiced for them that he's pain and again break things, you hurt things, and I'm somebody who's chronically ill, and so I'm in pain all the time. I can't imagine what it is for somebody to like have to wrestle, and then knowing their schedules was really like crazy, especially back then. And then WWE, everybody know how WWE's schedule was. Like they was barely home. They've gotten better with that recently, but we all know how bad the schedule was. And so to do all of that, it started leading to the path where he gets to WWF and things ain't even looking the same for him anymore. So now Sonny, he comes with this gimmick and the audience is really not liking the gimmick. Hey, but they're liking Sonny. And it did help that Sonny was, again, very pretty. She did have really good mic skills to kind of get, like that whole Tammy's tips when she kicked the lady down the hill. When she was like, I could get you, more. And then she like kicked her and the lady rolled down the hill. I'm like, see, me and Tammy gonna have to fight because you're not gonna kick me down the and the lady just rolled all pathetically down. And I'm like, why is she like, come on? So she obviously knew how to get under people's skin. And it worked, but she was also really pretty. And so it kind of started, we started seeing the shift between where his character they didn't really care about, but they cared about Sonny. And I think that started getting to her head a bit. It's like, okay, I know I'm pretty. Everybody's telling me I'm pretty. And then we kind of had that stuff with Shawn Michaels, which I love me some Shawn Michaels, but I'm like, Shawn, like, it made me feel bad for Chris because when they were saying, like, Terry, who made me mad when she talked about AOL, she mentioned AOL and said some nonsense about when that, I was like, sis, stop playing because I remember AOL and I am not, just because you want to act like you're an old hag and that's what you want to do, don't put me in that category. I remember AOL. I remember AIM. I remember my screen name and all. Okay, I remember my screen name to AIM and everything. Don't be putting me in the dinosaur category, like talking about before. Don't do that. I was kind of annoyed because I'm like, don't be this. If you want to consider yourself old and haggard, that's you. Don't put me in that because I remember AOL, and I am not like ancient. Okay, sis. So she was mentioning how everybody seemed to know that Sonny and Shawn Michaels was to get like sleeping together, and I heard the little clip when she was like, "Oh well, like nothing," After I was like, "Sis, you were totally lying." it was obvious. Hey, it was obvious that you guys were together. It was like some of them segments were a little too personal to be like, and then there was the whole thing that was mentioned during promos and stuff that I'm like, there was like Chris probably knew but was in denial about that. I'm like, oh, poor Chris. Like, it made me feel extra bad again. I'm like, why I keep feeling extra bad for this guy? Because like that, like, I get, and of course, you know, Shawn Michaels top guy. You know, Shawn Michaels, everybody knows Shawn Michaels wasn't the nicest guy back then. Like, he was a bit of an asshole. Everybody knows this. Everybody's aware that Shawn Michaels was a pain in the ass back then. Everybody knows this. So what can you say to Shawn Michaels during that time period without getting fired? And I understand that. And so it made you feel bad for him. But what were your thoughts, I guess, leading up to WWF, Sonny's bit of a rise, and then this whole little Shawn Michaels thing?
Yeah, no, I definitely noticed, like, you could tell, oh my God, when they showed the clip of one of the times, I guess, when they had a run-in in the ring and Shawn just kept repeatedly kissing her, I'm like, y'all got the point across. These extra kisses is crazy. Y'all are disrespectful. But we know that Shawn was disrespectful back then. This is like known knowledge. Like, it's in a dictionary somewhere probably.
Yeah.
But that was crazy with the extra kissing he was doing. I'm like, why you keep kissing her? We get it, Shawn. You are disrespectful. Oh my God. I was gasped. I was like, it was an audible gasp that I did when I watched it. Because, you know, you just forget all this stuff. It's so much wrestling you take in that you can't remember everything, okay? You can only remember the pivotal stuff. But yeah, I really did feel so bad for him. Like, it's like basically your hands were tied. It's like you at your job and it's just like you just gotta take it. You can't even say nothing. Like, that is terrible. I felt so bad. Like, that's what I'm just saying. It just was making me more and more sad because I'm like, damn, he can't even fight back at this point. That was terrible. Tammy, you ain't right. You is not right, girl. You ain't right what you was doing to that man. Nasty work. That was nasty work.
Yeah, I definitely did. I definitely did feel bad for him. I felt like everybody know I love Shawn Michaels. That is my guy, but he was such an asshole. So I was like, it made you. Hey, thanks for popping in XCPW. Yeah, I definitely was like, oh, Shawn, you're making it hard right now to defend it because this is so mean. Like, it was just so many things that he could have been done differently. But yes, it was also the part where Tammy's like credited to being the first diva, and this is before Sable got there because Sable came a little bit after her, and it seemed like WWE started moving away from Sunny and going to Sable again. Sable blonde. Big, you know, the boobs, the black, everybody know how Sable was back then, and it felt like that's kind of where it kind of went down for Sunny. I felt like she started kind of really struggling because she wasn't like the person that at the top anymore. This was something that Mick did say that he thought Chris's biggest addiction was Tammy. And I'm gonna have to agree to an extent that it was like, you know, he tried, I guess, even dealing with the nonsense that she was blatantly cheating, because she definitely was. You know, it was so many things that I felt like really bad for Chris. But anyway, this kind of leads.
If I could also add in, what made me sad about it is the fact that it was like, you think back to how badly, I wouldn't say bad, but it's like how not good that they booked women or how they helped women, to the fact that one person could come in and you telling me you can't find a way to make this other woman who you had all this time for feel comfortable enough to be there as well. It's only like one or the other. Like, that just tells you how far, you know, women in this business has come, to where it's like, you telling me you couldn't find a way for it to be both existing at the same time. It was either one or none. That just made me sad. And it also makes me happy to see where women's, you know, just women in wrestling has, you know, come to, where more than one woman can shine in the light and not be worried about losing their spot completely.
Yeah, you're right about that, because that was like, there was a story that was told about this bucket. Like, it was about some bucket. They, you know, apparently people used to do stuff to this bucket in the locker room, and they did disgusting things. And they did that to Tammy because they said she had an attitude, but it was like, I think they were mad because she got popular so quickly. That's when Terry did mention that she was the most downloaded person on AOL. She was pretty, you know, she was like a sex symbol, cut promos, can do what she needed to do, and did it quickly. That I think some people were jealous about it. And while it was told in like a nice way, I'm like, I don't know how I would feel about y'all sitting here acting like this is funny. Like this is the thing when you hear sometimes older wrestlers complain about the locker room being too like granted. I do think social media take away from feuds because it's a weird thing to be like, I hate this person, and then next minute you're on Instagram like, hey, we're having brunch. I can't really buy this. So that I get, but it's like outside of storyline purposes, when it's like, oh, I gotta haze a wrestler. I gotta bully a wrestler. I would never agree with any of that. I don't understand why wrestling was such a point where it's like people I'd had to worry about getting like stabbed or shanked or like worried about being bullied or treated really poorly, like when they did to the Miz. I just like I don't understand stuff like that. And this is with most sports because I've always said this. You hear this about like basketball players, football players, where they have the newbies do these weird things, and I'm like, see, I would have got called not a team player because you try that with me. I know my mouth. I know how I am, and so you're not gonna be talking to me crazy and think I'm carrying any bag. You're gonna put any. I'm gonna be eating in any closet or any of that. Like we're gonna have a problem. There's gonna be respect. Always respect. I don't do that, and so I didn't particularly like that the way the story was told. Like it was a nice thing. I feel like that just yeah, she probably had an attitude because look how you guys. Probably, I'm not saying, and again, we already know Tammy has some stuff. We already know about her, but I feel like in this regard, I don't know why the story was told in like a funny way because it was said like it was a joke, and I'm like, I don't know. And then there was even the thing with the whole Shawn Michaels with, you know, Terry was kind of saying that she wanted to be loved, and being loved by the top guy was better than being loved by her boyfriend. I'm like, well, that's a kind of a weird way to put it. Maybe because Shawn Michaels, let's be real, that's why I liked him. He was like, he was attractive. My little child heart was like, oh, who's this? You know, like as a kid, so I can imagine what it was for the like adults going through there. But anyway, he did break his neck in WF, which led to the addiction and to the point where it was even worse for him because he was also in pain. He was addicted to stuff, and then Sonny was getting some more shine than him, which wound up having him leave WWE and join ECW. And so this is when Lance Storm kind of comes back in and said they worked together in ECW. And said that his back was so messed up, the doctor thought he got into a bad car accident, that he shouldn't have had that much of a bad, like from wrestling, which is insane. And so during this time, he goes to ECW, which he did thrive at first in ECW. It was more for guys his size, which is correct. He can be more extreme, do more crazy things, and get loved by the audience. And eventually, Sunny will make her way to ECW as well. And she will also start using drugs as well, more socially, to the point, you know, where the drug problem got too bad to ignore, which leads me to this thing with Paul Heyman, which I kind of had to give him a side for. Now, I like Paul Heyman. I think he has a really good wrestling mind. He is like, he has helped Brock, he has helped Roman, he has helped people, but I kind of had to give him a side eye. When he told Tammy to keep her job, she had to do this random like tell-all video for ECW TV, and it was just like, why is this the way to do this? I feel like this is a really odd way to have somebody to keep their job. It was really sad to see because clearly she was on like camera, she wasn't even in her right frame. You can tell. And I'm just like, all right, like Paul. And then I think even Jim Cornette was like, he done some stuff. And even he wouldn't have put that on like TV. And Paul Heyman was like, well, it's the audience talking. And I'm like, no, Paul. I don't know how no, I feel like this was not the way to go. It did make me sad eye him because I'm like, this is not the way you kind of handle that situation. But so what are your thoughts about, I guess, leading up to the ECW, the whole Tala, Paul Heyman, and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, I definitely had, it was like a bombastic side eye at Paul Heyman because why would you do that? You know, and that's also another thing that I feel like, you know, back then with wrestling is like, it was more so about exploitation than it was about helping someone when you could clearly see something was wrong. Like, you know, where would they be today if maybe you went a different route instead of embarrassing them? That would only make someone want to turn to drugs more. You know, like, yeah, that's not a good look. Like, that really is very sad to me. I couldn't believe that he was doing that power bomb off the top rope every night. Like, come on, like you gotta, like, I get it, you wanna, do your thing, like, but you have to protect your body. And clearly he was not protecting it. Like, for a doctor to be like, well, where's the crash report? I'm like, what do you mean? I just came for a checkup. Like, that's crazy. Like, but you know what? He really put his body on the line. That's why it makes me so sad just going through this, of how much he loved the business. But it's almost like the business didn't love him back all the same.
Yeah, I definitely agree that with that it was a lot. And then even during all this, with that little random ECW thing, they also had a lot of domestic problems during all of this as well. And like a lot of the fights got violent. And there was also, this like show, and it was like she was with other men, and it just to the point where they got suspended from ECW, and they worked for the front office managing travel. And then this was the kind of thing that I kind of was like, all right, this is also kind of shitty. Now I get ECW, they're running the money. We already know the story with ECW and how eventually the WWE wound up having them. But the front was like, the company was like, well, you guys handle the travel, but we're not going to reimburse you. I would have stopped right there. Wrestling people, and if anybody who works in wrestling, sometimes some promoters just have to do some weird shit, and they're not as as they should be with people on their roster. And so there's no way I'm going to be arranging travel for wrestlers and I'm not getting reimbursed, and we're going to just keep doing it to the point where they lost their home. No, absolutely not. That was another thing I had to kind of side eye Paul for. I'm like, how you like they doing all this, and then you're not even gonna try to give their money back or try to make a way for them to not lose their home, and maybe you do the traveling arrangements then. That I thought was kind of shitty. And then they were saying that they were still able to even get drugs from like these shady pharmacies, which back then was like a real thing where they was easily able to get drugs and steroids and all that stuff, which wound up leading him to have a seizure and go into the hospital. And then, he wound up. They went to Puerto Rico for some promotion because they're trying to kind of get their career back, and that didn't really work out for them. And they also had more access to drugs and was kind of abused by the fans. And we already Puerto Rico's wrestling scene was kind of crazy back then. From what the stories I heard about some of the wrestling shows back then, it was to the point where Chris was like, all right, he's gonna clean his life up now, because now it's like it's bad. And so this is where he starts getting clean and starts getting better, and he's trying to he winds up joining TNA, where he kind of gets some better, he's in a better space now. He's not with Tammy anymore, because it's not like clearly that was the issue. They weren't together anymore. She did say there was a clip of her talking in 2020 where she did say after she broke up with him, she tried to say it was after the breakup, but sis, you're lying. We all she could say it was after the breakup, and that makes her feel better about it, but you definitely was with him, Sean, during all of that. But they weren't together anymore by this point. And then it kind of gets even more sad, because then it's like he gets himself together and he's in TNA. It seems like it's working out. And then he breaks his shin during the match in TNA and needs surgery. And so this was, and it makes you sad, because it's like he wanted to wrestle so bad, and he probably wanted to get his second win, because, he had a bit of a thing in his other promotions. It went over well, but then he got the WWF. It didn't really go over well because she got bigger than him. And then he went to, it was like the drugs and the drinking, and like, you guys are arguing. It's tumultuous. It's violent. And you finally was like, okay, I got to get because I almost died. Unfortunately, I've seen somebody have a seizure in person. They suck for me to watch. And so I can only imagine what it is to deal with one. But to get to that point, to have the surgery, I felt like this was the thing. It was like kind of hindsight, which I really wish he would have stayed in the hospital. He would have took his time to heal. He wanted to travel to a show, and in turn, because he did travel, he got on the plane. He wound up getting a blood clot, which did cause him to be hospitalized, and he died. And that's when everybody was like, wait, what? Because he's like, I just spoke to him on Monday. Even Tammy seemed a bit like, no, he can't, like all this, like, we're like, damn, like you got no breaks in any of this. And it's unfortunate because I kind of agree when Jim at the end was pretty much saying like if he would have lived, he probably would have been fine today because nobody said anything outside of the fact that him and Tammy had that really bad toxic, because clearly the relationship was toxic. They had that toxic relationship. Nobody said anything about Chris doing anything like where he was like being a rapist, he was being a pedophile, like anything you hear about wrestlers doing things. He just wanted to wrestle. He just wanted to wrestle, and yes, he did have this whole like thing with Tammy and got violent, and that's on both of them. And so there was that abuse stuff between the both of them, and so that was wrong, obviously. But nobody really had anything really negative to say about him, like where you hear about like Ric Flair, for instance, some of the stuff that he was doing back then, like stuff like that. Hell, Randy Orton was just crazy ass shit back then. So when in the beginning of his career, and so it just made it really sad that and they didn't mention Tammy's legal troubles because she got arrested quite a few times in the last 4 or 5 years. The most recent one being I think in 2002 she did drive with a license without a license, and so she wind up killing somebody who was 75. He died, and so and her blood alcohol I think was 3.5 times the legal limit. And so she is currently in jail right now, and I'm gonna assume if she should probably get convicted. I don't see why she wouldn't. She'd probably get like 20 years, and that's a really sad thing that you literally could have been a doctor. Now you could have been a doctor, could have been like PhD or something, and it does. I do it just made you sad. I did feel sad for Chris. I lost an aunt to blood clot years ago. She went in for something else, never came back, and that's what happened to her too. And so that extra hit, because I'm like, damn, like blood clots is so serious, like that because they travel. That you everybody knows after surgery, you probably surgery like that, you probably should not travel. You shouldn't even probably be out of bed. And so it's unfortunate that's what happened with him. It's unfortunate that he died young, and that if he honestly was around today, because we know there's a lot of wrestlers of his size, I do think he would have thrived. And he was pretty much clean until that injury. And so, like, he would have been, I think he would have really thrived. And it's unfortunate that we don't really know what could have really been because his career kind of was like shaky once he got to WWF and then WWE, excuse me. And then, everything that happened with Tammy and everything. And so it's unfortunate because he did love wrestling so much that he's just like, I'm going to travel anyway. And it cost him his life. And so what were your thoughts, I guess, all of that to the end? Because it made me sad, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. This was so sad because I think throughout this entire episode, the thought that kept coming to my mind, I said a little bit earlier, it's he loved wrestling so much, but wrestling didn't love him back the same. If anything, it was something that, like, just for him to feel so, like, indebted to the wrestling, like, part and to make sure the story is told, for him to get on a plane after having a surgery to make sure that, he keeps things right and make sure, things are set up for him for in his, like, wrestling, the storyline stuff. That just breaks my heart. And then also the conversation that he's had with his brother Johnny about, like, where he said, I messed things up. And it was like, I think at that time they say he was like, what, 32, 31? Like, that's another thing within wrestling that I'm glad. I feel like it's pretty much died out for the most part today, of this whole thing of, like, once you turn 30 or some type of age, it's like, which is weird because I don't know, because, you got Ric Flair here, but then there's other wrestlers who, you get to a certain age, it's like, well, it's over. Your prime's gone. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not, like, what? Like, it just drives me nuts. And I felt so bad. Like, it just shouldn't have happened that way. And someone should have had better thought. Someone in management should have stepped in. There's so many times in WWE and ECW and, Impact where someone in management should have stepped up and they did not. If someone in management would have stepped up in either of these things for real, things could have been so different. So different. And it's just sad where it ended up. And it's sad that someone that genuinely loved wrestling, had to end up that way because no one really stood up for him. No one in that business that he loved so much didn't stand up for him the way they were supposed to. And Tammy, you need to stay up in jail. That's it. I had to add that too. Stay up in jail because you can't just be out here taking lives. How many times has she had these, hit and runs and stuff like that? It's like, you can't do that. This is serious. You're putting lives in danger. How many lessons do you need?
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It is. I did feel bad for him. It was like his
It's unfortunate. It is.
his life was cut tragically short, and I don't think he really got to thrive like he should have, because he actually did love the wrestling business. Like I said, the boy was he was going to wrestling shows with him and his friend every weekend at like a middle school. I feel like you have to love the business to want to do all of that. But yeah, it was a sad episode. They didn't really give much information on. As far as Tammy, but yeah, I guess we'll see with the next episode. Oh, I do think the next episode. I forgot which one it is coming up next. I think is it crap, what is this guy's name? It's gonna bug me now. For the next episode. But I think this one's gonna be sad too, because I'm like, oh my god. I feel like the next episode is gonna be sad as well. But it was sad. And I do think Tammy needs to go to jail. I don't know. I feel like maybe if she never got to wrestling, if Jim Cornette never said maybe bring her along, it might have been a lot better for her. It might have been a lot better for both of them, honestly. I feel like they were addicted, and in a bad way, not like the young people, oh my god, I want somebody to be obsessed with me. I was like, no, you don't. You don't want that. You don't want somebody to be super obsessed with you to the point where it's like negative. Like, you want somebody to love you, obviously. Everybody wants that, but you don't want it to be a point where it's dangerous. And so it's unfortunate. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of these episodes this season is gonna be really sad from what I saw of the people that's gonna be next. But yeah, otherwise it was a good first episode, but it was really sad. I was like really sad. I was like, damn, like how do you like? I gotta watch something happy right now because I feel like so down. Like it was really unfortunate, and I felt bad for his brother. I felt bad for his mom. I don't know. I just hopefully she will get herself together when she's in jail, and she'll get it together. I don't know, because I feel like, sis, by now get it together. I don't know what else do you need. But yeah, that's the first episode. Really sad. But yes, I feel like we just did this. But tell everybody where they can find you who didn't see it on Women's Wrestling Talk, and what you got going on.
You can find me at Shay Sawyer _ on most platforms. You can also find me at Shay Sawyer on just Shay Sawyer, not even underscore, on Twitch. You can also catch a new episode of the Big Pop Theory podcast every Monday on Spotify. We just dropped a new episode, so definitely check that out. Then you can catch me on Thursday right back on Women's Wrestling Talk for the Women's Wrestling Army after show at 5, and then for the NXT review show at 7 p.m. with this fantastical lady right next to me. Where can we find you?
For me, I'm on most social media in Cat We Trust, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, the Easy 3. You can catch me Mondays, Women's Wrestling Talk, doing WoW, and on Thursdays doing an NXT recap. You're probably gonna get a rant or two. Usually NXT makes me rant. WoW, not so much. NXT, yes. And because we're doing all the Dark Side of the Ring, you can catch us after the NXT show here on Cat We Trust in an Unpopular Review to talk about all the episodes in season 4. Like I said, I feel like it's gonna be a really sad season because a lot of the stories, I'm like, damn, like it's sad. I had to do some when I was doing the thumbnails, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I didn't really sad stuff, and so it's gonna be a bit sad this season. But we glad you guys came back with us this time. It's been a year. It's been a whole year since we've done the Dark Side of the Ring. We're glad to be we are glad to be back. And we will catch you guys. It'll be double of us because we are like we are like the best duo ever. Like, hello. Best duo ever. And we will see you guys next week. Later, guys.